Initial Thoughts is a spoiler-free movie review series. All opinions are my own. Hi everyone, welcome back to Initial Thoughts, a series in which we talk about films as and when they're released. Today's film we're talking about is The Northman, directed by Robert Eggers and stars Alexander Skarsgard, Nicole Kidman, Claes Bang, Ethan Hawke, Anya Taylor-Joy and Willem Dafoe. So as you can imagine, when I come out of the cinema and I've seen a film and I know I'm going to do an Initial Thoughts video on it, I'll come out and I'll think, whether it be good or bad, I have some kind of inclination of what I'm going to say about the film I've seen. The Northman, a lot like a lot of Robert Eggers' work, is a hard film to talk about. Let's put it that way. And not that I'm struggling to find things good about the film, actually it's on the contrary. It's trying to find a place to start to talk about this film as a whole and how much I adored it. And I'll start with something I don't usually start with, and that's imagery. Some of these shots, some of these scenes, and some of there is genuine scenes in The Northman. And this will be something that wasn't as frequent in The Lighthouse with some of the scenes, and although there certainly was that element of it, and there was certainly some scenes of this in The Witch, which is really my knowledge of Robert Eggers, I'll be honest. It's not any further than those two, to be truthful. But some of these scenes in The Northman, some of these beautiful scenery locations that they shot on, and I know I'm a wee bit biased because they did shoot here in Northern Ireland, where I am based, let's say, and that was something that first of all drew me to the film. But then I watched the trailers, then I read about it, then I read the director that was attached to it, the cast that was attached to it, and I thought, okay, I'm very, very invested in seeing The Northman. So now I've seen the film, I thought the first place to start would be some of the points I maybe didn't prefer that what happened in the film. And something that I slightly did, certainly maybe the first 30 to 40 minutes of the film, I would say there's certain pacing issues. And I would feel that certainly it's not the most engaging film from the start, but that's really where my criticisms end of The Northman. I would just say it's not the most... I worry that people, maybe if they're half asleep, might come into this film and fall asleep. The people that aren't the movie diehards, let's say, and they're just going to the cinema for the sake of it, they might have checked out in the first 20 minutes. But I thought, okay, you know what? Slow start, but I'll stick with it and see where we go. And I'm so glad I did, because bar the slow nature of the first half, and that's not saying, well, not the first half, the first kind of portion of the film, but that's not to say that the first portion is lacking quality by any means. It's just that some of the plot details aren't the most engaging from the start, but the story it lays out, and the way it's directed and the way it's written is wonderful. It just is a bit of a pacing issue on a movie side of things. But now I've got that slight criticism out of the way of the only thing I could really find a fault of The Northman, let's talk about what I loved. And let's really find somewhere to start on what I loved. And I'll start where I tend to start when I talk about the good things, performances. And let's talk about some of these, because we've got some new actors, we've got some, ones that will go on to, I would assume, be in big films and continue to be in big films from now. Some of these younger actors and newer actors. But let's talk about some of the golden oldies, let's say, and hopefully that's not in a derogatory way. That's in a place of love when I talk about people like Nicole Kidman, Ethan Hawke, and Willem Dafoe, because those three, the quality that they bring to this film, and they all have their time to shine, let's say, because it's not like they're just here for star power, because that does happen quite a lot in some of these films. They go, oh well, they're in it, okay, that gives me an excuse to go see it because I quite like them in X, Y, and Z. But having Nicole Kidman, having Willem Dafoe, and having Ethan Hawke in this, and not only having them, to boost the roster, let's say, but also having some of their best performances. Certainly, Willem Dafoe and Ethan Hawke have definitely had better performances than The Northman, I'll be honest. But Nicole Kidman in this film, I was blown away by the scene she was in. And it's not like she's in a majority of this film, but what she is, oh my goodness. Where has this Nicole Kidman been for a good while? Because obviously her prime time in Hollywood would have been the 90s, kind of late 80s, early 90s. And maybe that's not fair. It certainly carries through to now. But there was a real prime time where Nicole Kidman was probably the hottest actress in Hollywood. And, around the time of Eyes Wide Shut, that kind of era of Hollywood was kind of her. She was probably the most talked about woman. And she still has such a presence in cinema today. And that's why when you go into this film, you see, and it's an actress that, and that was another thing that brought me to this film. When you see someone like Ethan Hawke, who's on a real high at the moment, Nicole Kidman, who it seems to be she's picking and choosing her roles now. She's not taking the, just the easy paycheck, let's say. She's thoroughly going to the ones that are worthwhile. And my goodness, the performances in here are so good. But that's talking about the kind of legacy actors, if you want to call them that. But let's talk about the two leads and the two names you'll be talking about coming out of this. Anya Taylor-Joy is probably one of the hottest prospects in Hollywood and maybe the world at the minute with her Queen's Gambit theme, and just she's one of the most talked about women there is nowadays. So coming into this, it wasn't just, oh well, there she is, another thing she's in. It really wasn't that. It was okay. And I'll be honest, I haven't seen The Queen's Gambit as yet, and I am not too familiar with anything she's been in. I just know of her. And she is wonderful in this. She is wonderful as the character, the role she plays, the dynamic with her and the main character, who we'll get to in a moment. Wonderful. Wonderful performances by the whole cast. And that leads us to our final cast member, Alexander Skarsgard. And to talk for a moment about the Skarsgards as a whole, his father being Stellan Skarsgard, another one of those legacy actors, has so many acclaimed films to his name, and his repertoire is fantastic. And then his brother being Bill Skarsgard, who has been in so much and is so well known now, namely for Pennywise, of course. So I have to be honest, Alexander Skarsgard is not it. When I heard the name Skarsgard, I went, oh, it must be, oh no, it's not Bill. Okay, so it's another one of the brothers then. And I looked up his IMDb page before I seen the film, and I seen he was in a few things, but nothing I had really seen or really registered. I know he was in Godzilla vs. Kong, but it wasn't really a role that would have defined him in any means, certainly by the nature of the film that was. But Alexander Skarsgard as the Northman, as our lead in this film, the dynamic and the character that we have to root for, essentially. What he portrays and the kind of hurt and pain his character goes through, the emotions that he expresses, sometimes the lack of emotions, sometimes the full emotions, you live this film, you live this story with him as the audience. And that was something that was what really got me from the start. That was the part, not to give away any plot details, but following his story and the different plot beats of what happens to him. It's not like it's an overarching story where there's multiple characters. There is one center point of this film, and that is Alexander Skarsgård's character. And he is wonderful. I can't wait to see what he does next. And that's what I love whenever I see a new actor. Because sometimes they're new and you go, okay, well they were passable and that was fine. But I love seeing these up-and-coming actors and they get their kind of defining role early. And with him doing so well in this film, I can't wait to see what happens next. And the Northman as a whole, and just kind of in a summary, before we get to rating times, I just want to talk briefly about just Robert Eggers as a director. Because his films are so... they are genuinely a mesmerising experience. Whether you end up loving the films, hating the films. I have to be honest, The Witch as a film is not one of my favourites by any means. But it's hard to deny the quality, the talent, and the care, the dedication that goes into, it's so hard to describe. And you know what I mean when you've seen these films, talking about films like The Witch or The Lighthouse, and now The Northman as well. And while The Northman is maybe more of a focused narrative, you could say, and I found that this film not only ticked boxes that I wanted what I wanted it to be, but also exceeded my expectations. And while I said earlier there was a slight pacing issue near the start, overall, I loved this film. The Northman was a film that I went into with, certainly, as I say, some expectations, but it wasn't like I expected the world of this film. But I also found it such an experience in the cinema. Sitting watching this, and it's, you know, the 2 hours, just over 2 hours runtime. It's not a long film, but its parts, it feels like a long kind of legacy action. It's so hard to put into words, this film, and I feel that that's the point. That's the point. Everybody will come out of the Northman. I would imagine a lot of people will go in and go, nope, not for me. Can see why people like it. Or the flip side. The flip side for me, I could understand. I understand if people went in and it's just not their thing. It's just not their cup of tea, let's say. But for me, for what I wanted the Northman to be, it was near enough perfection for what I wanted it to be. So let's get into rating times. And while IMDb only has a few ratings, and just before I do my rating, I do want to say, this film, I want to criticise the studio and whoever's doing the marketing for this, because I see nothing about this film, really. I saw the odd trailer, you know, that kind of came up on YouTube or on television or whatever, but there was not a whole marketing campaign. You wouldn't even know this film is out. And that's what, honestly, it drives me mad when you have such quality and you throw it, because this will not make that much money. And I look on IMDb and there's only 4,000 ratings, and that says it all. Not many people have seen this film. So there's the early indications is they're giving it 7.9. I am definitely going in excess of that, because I think, you know, I thought it's way over an 8, say, if we were rounding it up. For me, while I do have some pacing issue, I think there's so much quality in the Northman, and that's why I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I might watch it again, it might go up again. I might watch it again and go, actually, do you know what, it's 9.5? But I don't think I could ever give it a 10. I think there's a few, as I say, that early part is the only thing that puts it slightly down in my estimation of the film. But it's nowhere under a 9. It is wonderful. I actually can't wait to see it again. I probably will see it again before it leaves the cinema. And I would definitely encourage you to, because how have they... Oh, that always annoys me. That always annoys me that people, when they have a studio, they have all this money, they've put the budget for this, they've paid all the actors, they've done the whole works, and then they don't do the most important part. They tell the audience it exists. And that is just mind-numbingly stupid, especially when you've got quality like the Northman. But yeah, that's my review for the Northman, guys. I be honest, and you can probably tell, it was a hard one to put into words, this film. I think if I'd seen it maybe a second or even a third time, I'd be able to maybe articulate it more, but I wanted to get this initial thoughts out. It's in the name. It's my initial thoughts on the film. I've just seen it. And it's a film, at first viewing, I loved a lot. I loved what they've achieved in this film. I love the performances. I love the scenery. Half of the scenery, or half of the shots in this film, I could put as my desktop wallpaper, because they were all fantastic. It is... Oh, I can't wait to see this again, guys. And I would definitely encourage you to as well. It's a film that, if you think it's your cup of tea, give it a go. That's what I would say. So yeah, that's been my initial thoughts on the Northman, guys. I really appreciate you listening to me, as always. And if you want to hear more from me, there's more reviews coming. There's some big movies coming up in the next month or so. You know where the initial thoughts will be. They'll be right here. If you could subscribe and give us a like, let me know you enjoyed it. That would be oh so beautiful. And I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Before you go, here are some of my other videos. For updates and information on upcoming videos, the best place to find us is my Twitter. Much love, everyone.